All right.
Hello and welcome to Tap That MTG, the show where we tell you everything we know about Magic the Gathering. That's fun to talk about, but sometimes wrong. I did that wrong. I'm Lesley.
And I'm Shawna.
Today we are going to give you our opinions. This is an opinion piece of which devotion deck is currently the best in standard. So we had a bunch of devotion cards come out with Theros Beyond Death, and so we're going to break down some of the decks that are being used right now that are strictly devotion. But before we do that, what's devotion?
Devotion is the card says something is equal to your devotion to whatever color. So that is a count of the number of those pips that you have of that color. So in the mana cost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cool. So we're going to break down each of the decks, give it some ratings based on what we think might be the best. Shauna's rated them, I've rated them, and then at the end we're going to tell you in order which ones we think were the best. So the first one we're starting with is red.
Of course.
Red. There's only 2 devotion cards in red that were released, which is very interesting. So, what do we got?
Well, Annex Hardened in the Forge is the biggest card that has been seen in a lot of the red devotion decks. So he is pretty powerful.
At only 3 mana cost too. He's really
he gets out there
a fast one. So for those that aren't aware, he has the bigger your devotion, the bigger his power is. So he's meant to be super aggressive. And then the other one is Theros, the Bronze Blood, and he is the god. They each have a god. He's indestructible. What does he do?
7/6 for 5.
Yeah.
He basically his main thing is to put your creatures onto the battlefield very quickly.
And they have haste. All the other creatures have haste.
So he's kind of aggressive.
So we have 5 categories that we are rating these under. So first one is devotion to devotion. So what did you rate this one as for devotion to devotion, Shauna?
This one I rated as a 3 because I think the soldier guy, what's his name, Annex, is fairly important to this one in a lot of the decks, but the Theros not so much. So it's not a really great devotion.
Theros is pretty expensive for a red deck. And so I agreed. I gave it 2 out of 5. This is out of 5 because I didn't think that this deck really relied on the devotion to win, which brings us to ease of play.
So ease of play is basically just how simple the deck is to play. You don't have to think a lot. You just swing a lot. Which is pretty easy to do in this deck. So I gave it a 5 out of 5 for that. There is
a little bit of thought that gets put into, are you going to use your shock to kill their creature or to kill them, and what time? Now, I guess before we get into some of that, of course, those are not the only 2 cards in this deck. There's lots of iterations. We're not going to talk about all the iterations of this deck that you might see out there, but devotion requires you to have lots of pips. So we see cards like Torbran in there. We see, of course, the Fervent Champion. What else are kind of cards that you're seeing in?
I've actually seen the Giant as well, because he shocks people, and then he comes out as a big guy. So I've seen it.
Some people are leaving Cavalcade for Calamity in there. I know that's in yours, but it's not in mine because you're swinging with a lot of bigger creatures with the devotion. This Annex guy has a big devotion. But as we saw in one of your games, when he dies, he creates a bunch of 1/1s. So it is a valid strategy as well. I've
seen the what's his name, the Planeswalker, the devil makes the devils, because there's so much life gain. So it helps with playing against the life gain decks. Tybalt, that's his name. Sorry, I couldn't think of it.
That's okay.
So I've seen that in lots, and plus he makes 1/1s that again helps.
So lots of deck lists out there. We firmly believe there is not one deck out there that's the best deck to play. It's just a matter of building what you feel comfortable with and putting in what you like. And sometimes you put cards in there that nobody's seen in a while, and they go, what are you doing? And they don't know how to do with that. So ease of play, I also put 5 out of 5. for this one because really, even though there's a few choices, most of it is just be aggressive and burn your face. So
Yeah, exactly.
What about consistency and wins?
So consistency and wins, it's fairly good at winning. It depends where you're playing and when, but it wins a lot. It's Red Deck wins for a
definitely wins a lot. It's win percentage. So I had changed mine. So you rated this at?
I rated it as 5.
5 out of 5. I rated it at 4 out of 5 because while it is fairly consistent and its win percentage is fairly high, it does die to anything that you allow to get set up. So if you don't win right away, then you're not going to win. As soon as they get their Simic deck, as soon as they get their Esper Control deck or their
Life Gain or whatever.
Orzhov Control or their Life Gain deck going and they have enough blockers, you can't keep attacking and getting in with anything. I think I have Lava Coil in mind just to kind of get rid of some of their creatures, but only a couple. So once you haven't killed them by turn 5, you lose. So that's why I gave it 4. But it's still a pretty high win.
Our next category we have is easy to attain. So the cost of the cards. We thought that was pretty important for our viewers as well, like how expensive are these decks. And so I rated this one as 4 because for the most part it's a pretty cheap deck. You can do a lot with a little bit of money with these decks. So.
And the cards that you buy, I gave it a 4 out of 5 as well. The cards that you've bought for previous decks still work in this deck. You don't have to do a lot of changing, so it is fairly easy to attain. And really, there's only the one card that you're going to use. You might have the God, which is a mythic. It's a little harder to come by on Arena or in paper, but Annex is an uncommon, so while he's being played, he might be hard to get on paper just because people are playing him. He's fairly easy to open up in packs.
Yeah.
So, what about fun to play?
Fun to play, it's definitely fun. It's not my favorite because it's pretty fast, but fun to play, I rated it 4 out of 5 just because it's, if you want to get in there and have some quick games of Magic, you can do it really well with this deck.
Yeah, I did 4 out of 5 as well. Pretty much the same reason. The reason it lost a point for me was because it is kind of so easy to play and consistent. I get bored really quickly, so it's just kind of like, and the games are so short, so if you're just playing this over and over and over again, it's going to get you high in the tier, but it's not going to be fun to play after the first hour.
Can only do it so many times because it's the same over and over again.
So all in all, we have 40 out of 50 for this deck in the scores.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and that'll make sense when we get to the end. So now we're moving on to our devotion to black decks. So there were quite a few more cards in the new set that had references to devotion. So the first one is the Blight Breath Cubble something or other. Anyway, he's a big beast. There's
nice
that
removal for that one.
The removal.
And the Drag to the Underworld.
To the Underworld's removal as well. It's an instant. And then the Erebos, which is the god, the black god. You don't want to see him on the battlefield. No. And then I'll let you talk about the next two.
Oh, sure. Well, we can just go back and forth. That's fine. The other two that they have in this are Timoret, which is big based on your devotion. And then, of course, the Gray Merchant, Mr. Friend Gary, is in there. And devotion, they lose X life and you gain X life, where X is your devotion. So I think the key ones that people are playing with with black are the Timoret and the Gray Merchant and the removal, the Drag to the Underworld. I don't see Blight Breath very often. Erebos probably is in there, but he doesn't come out
not
very often. So that's interesting. Maybe because you win first. A lot of low to the ground. This is a really fast deck to play. You're seeing it with Murderous Rider. You're seeing it with some kind of little 1/1, whether it be a cat, whether it be a gutter the bones or gutter the bones, foul mire, little death touchers, so that you can get a really big board and lots of devotion out. The other one that I like in mine is the one that every time you draw a card, every time they draw a card, they lose a life. It has 3 pips on it, so that's a nice little one. And a Yara.
Yara, I like her. She's got 3 pips as well.
Yeah.
As well as I like the little Yarok Fenlurker dude. He's 2 pips on him, and he makes them discard cards.
Yeah.
I also like the new black flyer that has 2, and when your creatures die, you can exile them and make copies of them, which you can do that with Yarok or whatever, and you're repeating things over and over again with that card, plus it's a 4/4 flyer.
So really there's a lot of options with this. There's a lot of Black Devotion cards, and then there's a lot of options. Really, if you're going to build a Black Devotion deck, you're going to look for things with 2 pips at least. There's a few 1 pip things, but most of the time 2 to 3 pips is what you're going to see on the battlefield and what other people are playing, because Gary Gray, the Gray Merchant, is really the main win condition for this deck. So what do we got for
our ratings here? Devotion to Devotion, I rated this as 5 out of 5 because it's so much, the whole idea of it is to get a final swing in with Gary and kill them for the number of devotion pips you have. So you gain life and they lose life. It's just crazy.
Yeah, I also rated it 5 out of 5. It is heavily devotion with this one, and it works really well as a devotion deck. So 5 out of 5.
For ease of play, I said 3 out of 5 for this one because you do need to know when to play what. So it might be tempting to be a little bit too aggressive with this deck and let your creatures die, and you got to be really careful. You want creatures out there, you want your stuff to stay in the battlefield, so it's a little bit different than some of the other black sack decks that I've played. So you do need to be thinking about keeping those guys out there and keeping that devotion up, because then you can do your final Gary thing. So it's a little bit more complicated, I thought.
And I gave it 4 out of 5 kind of for the same reason, but I kind of feel that this deck, once you know the strategy of it, and once you're playing it, you're not making a lot of decisions based on what your other player is doing. You're just kind of deciding when to attack and when to not attack. So once you kind of get it, you don't have. It's not like the blue one, which we'll talk about later, where your decisions are heavily affected by your opponent. Yeah, so I figured once you knew what your decisions should be at certain times, it was fairly easy. But it did lose a pip for me, or a point for me. So it's a 4 out of 5 for me for ease of play as well. Consistency and wins, I gave it a 5 out of 5. It's very consistent. It wins well. I hardly ever lose with it. No deck is 100%. No. But when you play with it, it's either they quit or you actually win. So,
and I didn't rate it as perfect. I've played a couple different versions of this deck because I love black, as a lot of my viewers know, and so I rated it 4 out of 5 just because some of the versions of it I've lost a lot with, and then the next day I'll win tons. So to me, it's not as consistent as I'd like it to be as far as that goes, but it's still 4 out of 5 because it still wins a lot. So,
for easy to attain / cost, I gave it a 5 out of 5. Most of the cards you need for this deck are common or uncommon, easy to find at your local game store, although everyone's playing it, so it might be a little bit harder to find. Really easy to attain on Magic Arena because you're going to have probably enough commons and uncommons to buy what you need for this deck. A lot of the black stuff you've been playing with already because it's all the removal and adventure cards, Murderous Rider, that type of thing. So they are a little bit more expensive, but you have them already. So I gave it a 5.
Yeah, and I gave it a 4 out of 5 just because it does have the Murderous Riders, a lot of the versions of it, and that 4/4 flyer is starting to become fairly expensive as well. I think it's a $6 or $7 card at this point. So it is a little bit expensive depending on which variation you play as well. So that's why I did that.
Fun to play?
Fun to play. It is very fun to play. I quite enjoy it, and I just didn't want to give it a perfect score.
Oh, she's critical. I gave it perfect. It's a 5 out of 5. This is interesting because I'm not typically a black player. Well, I am. I don't know, but this is a fun deck to play.
Enough depth in this deck.
Yeah, I do like this one. It's fun. It's 5 out of 5 for me.
So that brings us to a total of 44 out of 50 for that Black Devotion deck.
Mm-hmm. All right, moving on to blue.
Yeah.
Our blue deck is probably the most complicated one to play. There are 4 cards that have devotion mentioned in them. We have Caliph, Beloved of the Sea, which basically her power is equal to devotion to blue.
Mm-hmm. And Thassa's Deep Dwelling, her devotion to blue, basically she just becomes a creature and she just does lots of stuff for you.
Yep. And then Thassa's Oracle, which basically allows you to look at X cards, and basically you're just shuffling through your deck.
Yep.
Lots of good card draw there, and scrying, and just being able, the knowledge that you gain from Thassa's Oracle is
very
outstanding.
Important. Yes.
Yeah.
And then just the Throne de Singers, I can't say that word, but anyway, it's just a flash flyer, and it, I haven't played with it, so I don't do too much with it.
So we don't see that one, but the top 3, actually just really the 2, there's 2.
There's
Thassa,
2.
Deep Dwelling, and Thassa's Oracle that people are playing with.
The most with,
Yeah.
As far as how the deck works, it's a lot of, again, just digging through your deck, trying to get to your win condition. So there's various versions of it. The one I've played with the most is about getting to having as much of your stuff out as possible and running them over and making them quit, because you've got every card you have that in your hand that you need. So you have answers for everything. So it's very frustrating for the other player.
Yeah, and the Deep Dweller flickers your cards, which ultimately means it brings them into exile and back out, which takes advantage of things that happen when you enter the battlefield. So you want to have cards that take advantage of enter the battlefield effects. So things that we're seeing are Agent of Treachery. We, of course, have Thassa's Oracle. You can flicker back and forth. People see that. The Arcanist Owl you have in yours, Fibblethit.
The owl, the owl.
So
all that stuff has entered the battlefield.
When you enter the battlefield, it draws a card, those types of things, because the more cards you have in your hand, the more advantage you have, and then you have options and choices for it. I'm sure that you could do like a counter magic, a devotion. I haven't seen that one as much. Of course, the Cavalier has 3 pips.
Cavalier for sure. Yeah.
So that would take advantage of. So devotion to devotion. Would you rate this one?
So I said 4 for this one, because that Thassa's Oracle is such a key card in this, because you can dig through that whole, like, if you have 7 devotion, you can dig through 7 cards to find the perfect card that you need on the top of your deck. So it's really important in this deck, I think, and to have that, have your Thassa become a creature that you're hitting really hard with is really, really good too. So that's kind of why I put the devotion up to 4 out of 5.
That's fair. I gave devotion to devotion 3 out of 5, because I feel that this deck doesn't necessarily rely on the devotion. The 2 cards that are played that are devotion dependent are great cards, and they are definitely part of your win condition, which is great. But they're not really the reason that you win this game in the end. You're having to rely on those other things like the Cavalier and the Agent of Treachery in order to make your deck happen. So it still gets a 3, so it's a little bit more than half, but only a 3 out of 5 for me.
And for ease of play, I said a 1, because from my experience, it took a long time for me to understand what to play when, and the order to do things, and how to tap your mana properly. And I still make tons of mistakes with it, because there's so many cards in there that take advantage of X this and X that. It's just like, I don't even know, should I put this on the top right now? It's really, really hard to play. So I gave it a 1 out of 5.
Yeah, and I gave it a 2.5 for ease of play. Same reasons. There's a lot of having to do things at the right time, and like I was mentioning before, it's dependent on what your opponents are playing, rather than just, I know that if this is my hand, these are the order that I'm going to play the cards, and you're drawing so many cards and you have all these choices to make, so that slows down the game as well, which is okay. Take your time, make your decisions, but it is a little bit harder to make those decisions when you have more things in front of you to choose from. So,
and as far as consistency and wins goes, it does win quite a bit, but not as much as like the red deck or the black deck does. And consistency, again, it's very different because, well, maybe, I don't know. I'm kind of torn about consistency because you do know what your cards are going to be, but I don't know.
Well, being able to draw cards for me brings up the consistency.
I suppose that's true.
But because there are so many options and it is so dependent on what the other person is playing, it doesn't give you the same game, which is okay.
Right.
But yeah, that takes the consistency down for me. And like you said, I wouldn't say it wins all the time because it's highly dependent on who's playing that deck, whether it's going to win.
Yeah.
Now, you take someone that is a mythic champion and they're playing this deck, they're going to
win all the time.
Just fine with this deck. So our focus is not, we're not preaching to the mythic champions here. We're preaching to all of the rest of us that are trying to find a deck that they want to play. So.
In fact, I'm playing a deck list that someone went to mythic with.
Yeah.
But I can't make it win that often.
Yeah.
Often enough, but it's still not like 60% or whatever they had. So yeah, because it's so hard to play.
Yeah. What about easy to attain?
In real life, well, even on Arena, it's got a lot of expensive cards, a lot of rare cards. It's cards that you don't necessarily have because if you're not a blue player, you don't have them. So I had to spend a lot of my cards to get this stuff, and I think Lesley, there was too many that she didn't get. So it's not easy to get this deck.
Yeah, there was like pretty much the whole deck list that I didn't have, and I opened up a lot of packs.
Yeah.
So it's because, again, to me, it relies on so many of those other cards, like Agent of Treachery and those that are expensive cards and they're rares. There's a lot of rares in this deck in order to make it work well. So it is really expensive. So you gave it 2 out of 5. I gave it 2 out of 5. And I would say even on paper, not really that easy to get this deck. It's going to be a fairly expensive deck. So.
And it's very popular with
those
control players. You
want to play it if you're going to spend that money.
Committed to it for sure.
What about fun to play?
Fun to play. I have to say it's 4 out of 5 because it is really fun. When you get it going and you're figuring it out, it's always changing. It's always different. I hated it at first.
Yeah.
I said to my husband, I'm like, I hate this deck. It's so hard. But now I really quite like playing it. So
I gave it a 4 out of 5 as well. I think it is fun to play. I think that there's enough variety in it. There's a challenge. It gives you something different than just red deck wins boredom. So even though it doesn't win as much, it's a little bit more fun to play because of that.
You learn lots.
Yeah.
So overall, we gave it 29 out of 50. So for that one. So.
Devotion to White. So this one actually has quite a few cards in it that deal with devotion. We have Daxos, whose butt is as big as his devotion. And he can give you life every time a creature enters the battlefield. So my deck that is Devotion to White, I call it Devotion to Life.
He's all about life.
Yeah.
And then there is the Daybreak Chimera, which can only cost you 2 for a 3/3 flyer because his its mana cost can be 3 less if you have 3 pips out there. So it's pretty awesome.
And then Elizabeth, the Undaunted Hero, we have a Planeswalker that has Devotion number 1. She has 3 pips. And you can search your graveyard. And then creatures get +X/+X, where X is your devotion to White. So that's kind of her -8 ability. Not that hard to get to. Really great card.
Yeah. And then, of course, there's Heliod, the Sun Crowned, which is the white god that just came out. And the devotion for him is very important. And he lets you get lots of life. Every time you gain life, you put counters on guys. And you can make your guys have lifelink with him. He's just such an awesome card.
And then Reverend Hoplite as well. It's a great one. Basically, when it comes out, you get a 1/1 little 1/1 guy, little 1/1 dude for your devotion. So you got Devotion 10, you get 10 little 1/1 dudes. Insane. So it's pretty insane. What else is being played with this that you've seen?
I have seen the little 1/1 Alcid, the little life gainer dude, just because it just gets out there and it's very aggressive.
Yeah, I have that in my team. Lyndon is being played with it. She's got 3 pips. The Luxodon has 2 pips, and also you can tap and give your guys counters. I haven't seen that as much, but that is a good idea. Gids is in there. Gideon, because he's got 2 pips. Yep. So that's a great one. I haven't seen a lot of flyers. I have in mind Flutterfox.
Pardon me.
Because right now with the enchantments, pretty much there's so many enchantments out there, especially with some of these being enchantment creatures themselves.
I never thought of
it has flying, and then you have a little 2/2 flyer that you can give counters to and make it nice and big. So he's not devotion related, but he definitely fits in this deck.
He's a little surprise for people who don't expect him.
As far as devotion to devotion goes, totally 5 out of 5 for this for me. There's all of the cards that are in there could be used in the devotion deck. It doesn't really leave a lot of them out.
It's same with me. It's 5 out of 5 because it's all about that devotion.
Yeah,
it just gets better the more devotion you have.
Yep.
Ease of play, I said 5 out of 5 too because it's fairly simple. It's just you get in there and make them big and swing.
Yeah. And because you have that cushion of life, you don't feel so afraid. Yeah. I gave it 5 out of 5 as well.
As far as consistency and wins goes, I gave it 3 out of 5 because it's fairly consistent to win. It's a pretty aggressive deck. It wins lots for me, and again, that lifelink tends to help you do that.
But it's definitely not an all-out, all-the-time win. It's 3.5 for me. Your stuff dies to board wipes, so that can be a problem. It relies on you killing them quickly as well, just like the red deck wins, but it is definitely fairly consistent once you start playing it. It's the wins that kind of brings that down for me.
For the cost to ease to attain this deck, I said 3 out of 5 for that. I might go a little bit higher than that.
You can't change now.
I can't change it now, I know. But because the Heliod god is a little bit expensive, but he's actually fairly common. I've seen him in a lot of packs.
And so that's actually why I gave it 4, because as I was looking at them, I'm like, you know what? Daxos comes up a lot and Heliod comes up a lot. As far as rares, this is the most common mythic I've ever seen with Heliod.
Constantly.
He's always in every pack, it seems like. So I'm sorry if you've been waiting to open a Heliod or find a Heliod and you haven't got him, because I see him all the time in packs. So I think I gave it 4 out of 5 to attain.
And white, let's face it, a lot of players, pro players, don't play white because white sucks. Whatever.
She just did it, all you pro players. Not that you're watching.
White always has so many haters, and I really like to play it.
I like white too.
So it's not as expensive as some of those other, like the black or the blue cards. So it's not as expensive as far as gods go.
And fun to play. I give it 5 out of 5. It is super fun to play because there's all kinds of fun life gain shenanigans with it, and
and sometimes when it goes off, you're like, woohoo!
Yeah. I did try to be very unbiased in my ratings as well. Like I gave blue. We often, you guys hear us go, oh, blue and white's so awesome. We gave blue a 4 out of 5 for fun to play. So
yes, but this is funner.
This is more fun.
I gave it 5 out of 5 as well.
I think it's more fun because of its ease to play and its consistency. Like it's just kind of.
And it doesn't get boring like the red deck does, because sometimes it doesn't work, or sometimes you're trying to come from behind or whatever.
And that's true. There is a little bit more difference in how it goes. Yeah.
So it's a total of 43.5 out of 50. 43.5. All right.
Devotion to green. All right. We have. Oh, we're missing a card. Oh, we're missing 2 cards. Oh,
they're there. Okay. Sorry.
Where did they go?
Nosy.
Things happen.
Sorry, Nosy.
That's okay. And we're missing our. Oh, that just moved. That's okay. So Renata is the first one. Her power is equal to the devotion, so she's really big, and she also has the benefit of giving a 1/1 counter to all your creatures. So this deck is all about being big and beefy and aggressive, in my opinion.
Yep. And a couple other little ones, the Citizen Petitioner and the Nihilius Huntmaster aren't seen as much. They're going to be good commander cards for sure, because they go searching for stuff and getting cards for you.
But of course, the God, Nayla, Keen-Eyed. She's a 5/6 indestructible, and she basically, creature spells cost less, so get your creatures out. You can also shuffle through your deck and see if you can find them, right? So,
and Clothius, whatever design. It's a sorcery that uses your devotion to give your creatures +X/+X,
which is great because this is
really
ultimately
good.
a Ronus.
Yeah, that's right.
For all your creatures, just doesn't give them indestructible till the end of turn. So, Ronus is probably better. So speaking of Ronus, things that you could play in this, you could have a Ronus while it's still legal in standard. What else do we see? We see Yorvo. Yorvo?
The 3/3, or not 3/3.
4/4 for 3.
For 3.
It's got 3 pips.
Yes, so that's a
awesome.
good thing. The Questing Beast.
Yeah, Questing Beast.
Paradise Druid, because you want the ramp to get to your stuff, and it's got a pip on it.
Yeah. And then I actually really like the enchantment that allows you to fight when it comes in, because not only does it allow you to fight like the sorcery would, but it stays out, so you still have a pip.
Right.
So it's a removal that keeps devotion on the battlefield for you.
And I like Vivian.
Yeah.
She's got 3.
And of course Nisa.
Yep.
Yeah.
So they're in there too.
Lots
There's
of cards.
So many variations.
There's
of this
lots
deck.
of cards that are in there, and of course you'd have to make choices of what you want to put in. Ceratops, shifting Ceratops, I think I have that in mind. So
I do too.
As far as builds go, this could go so many ways and be fun in every single way. Devotion to devotion.
I said a 5 out of 5 because, again, getting those big green guys with lots of green pips on them is pretty awesome. Because you can do the +X/+X thing, but it just depends which variation of the deck you're doing.
And I did 4 out of 5 for this one because I felt like the devotion cards that you see regularly in here aren't the ones that are actually winning you the game. So they're good ones to have. Renata's great card to have. The God I actually don't see getting out that often, but great to have when it's out there. Those are really the only 2 you see on a regular basis. Other than that, you're relying on your Questing Beast and your Yorvo and all of those to win you the game. So it's still really great for devotion, but it lost a point for me there.
Okay.
Yeah. What about ease?
Ease of play, I'm marking it a little harshly because of the one I've been playing. It's a little bit harder to play. You have to be very patient. It's really hard not to swing.
Mine's super aggressive.
Hers is very aggressive.
I just swing.
I said 3 out of 5 because the one I've been playing is a little more complicated.
And I did 5 out of 5 because I keep things simple. Just
running them over.
Put a bunch of big creatures in there and run them over.
I'm just trying to make really, really big guys and make them go crazy stuff. Trample! It's all about trample.
Yeah. So Nyx Bloom, Ancient can go in there, and then I think you have Hour of...
I have Finale of
Honor?
Finale of Devastation.
Is it Devastation?
No.
We were just looking at it.
Finale of whatever. It's got the dinosaur on it.
I don't know.
It has the dinosaur.
It's on the screen.
Yeah. Okay.
Look at the screen.
Very
the
fun.
finale.
And
so she does that.
Yeah, and the big boar as well.
And if you're using that, then yes, you're going to have to sit back and wait until the right. But I prefer to just be more consistent and win. So.
Oh, let's tell them about Hornbeetle.
Hornbeetle. Oh, we forgot to say Hornbeetle. Yeah,
Hornbeetle
should definitely be in there. Yeah. But again, that's one that is in there, but it doesn't care about devotion. It only has 1 pip. Yeah. So it's a great card to have in this deck, but it kind of loses the devotion. Anyway, ease of play, I give it 5 out of 5. Consistency and wins. I think we were both pretty on the fence here. You gave it...
I give it 3 out of 5. It's great when it goes off, but again, if they wipe your board, you're behind.
Yeah, mine's 3.5 as well. Consistency, it doesn't win. And yeah, it's a board. Those board wipes, I don't know. Board wipes. Easy to attain. I gave it a 3 out of 5 for this because, again, the stuff that you're relying on to win you the game are questing beasts and Yorvo, and they're so expensive to purchase right now.
Yep.
They're up to 20. They're rares, so that does require a lot of rares. It's not quite as bad as the blue, but it is a pretty expensive deck to try and get.
Yeah, and I said 4 out of 5 for the same reason. There's a bunch of cards in there that are expensive for my version too.
But is it fun?
It is so fun. I love playing it. It's really fun. And again, it's different every time depending on who you're interacting with. So it's that's what I like about these decks, that have a lot of interaction, not just me sitting here playing with myself.
Yeah, and it is consistent. Like we both said 3 for consistency and win, but that's because it doesn't win a ton because there's so many board weights up there, but it is consistent. Like it is easy to kind of just do the same thing over and over again, which makes it fun, but also makes it kind of a little bit.
Yeah.
So 40.5 out of 5 total for that one. Yeah, out of 50.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So that brings us to who is the best according to us.
Dun, dun,
Since
dun,
we know everything.
So in 5th place with 29 out of 50 for a total of 58%, I'm sorry, is Devotion to Blue. Yeah.
It's fun though.
It is fun.
And in 4th place, we have the red deck, actually, with 40 out of 50, so 80%. And yeah, because it's 4th.
And in 3rd place, with
very close,
40.5 out of 50, so like literally 0.5 of a point. And ultimately, red and green, red lost it because of, I think it lost a point for consistency for me when I was playing it again this morning and kept losing. So, anyways, well, but 81%, it's really, really close. So 3 is green.
Yeah, and our top 2 are pretty close in percentage as well. So in 2nd place is the white deck, the Devotion to White. It is 43.5 out of 50, so 87%.
Yeah. 2. And then black. That is the one that got the highest score from us. 44 out of 50, 88%. So I guess in our opinion, black is the best devotion deck that's out there.
Yeah.
But we will say that red, green, white, and black were all in the 80% for us, between like 8% difference. It's just blue. And we will also say that our opinions were really based on whether a new player or someone who's only been playing for a couple of years or that isn't used to playing blue would be able to pick this deck up and play with it and be fun. So most of the points that it lost were because of cost and ease of play.
Yeah.
So if you are someone that is comfortable with playing blue and has a lot of blue cards, then that would go probably up in the 80s for you as well. Yeah. So all very close, all very fun. We think you should try them all. We hope you have fun. We would love to hear from you as far as what you think is the best devotion deck. What have you been playing with? What cards have you been pairing with it? You can visit us on all the social media. Yep. We have Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. We'd love to hear from you there. We also have this on podcast. Thank you for listening. If you're listening to this as a podcast, you can find it wherever podcasts are uploaded. And yeah, we will see you next week, hopefully.
Yeah. Hopefully.
And in the meantime, tap those magic cards and have fun doing it. Bye, guys.
Bye.